Greetings, interactive literature fans. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so let's start a review of the Choose Your Own Adventure book, Evertree Inn by Thom Baylay. Welcome to Evertree, Chapter 1. Well, it will have to do. It's certainly not much compared to what you've seen in the big cities, but this looks like as good a place as any to stop for the night. The sun is still just about visible over the mountains, and casts its orange glow on the endless expanse of green. You've been following the edge of the ancient first wood for 2 days now, and this is the first establishment you've seen. Not that you don't have a perfectly good tent with you, but a comfy bed and a warm meal would be a welcome change. Thom Baylay, and because of the spelling I have to assume that I'm pronouncing this wrong, is the author of 4 Choose Your Own Adventure books, 3 of which are in the Evertree series. Evertree Inn is a game set in a fantasy world in the D&D sense. You have all sorts of elves, orcs, and halflings sharing space with humans. Medieval level technology and magic is fairly commonplace, and monsters are a frequent threat. So, same idea as my review of Life of a Wizard. Now, the plot is not an epic adventure or a big battle or anything. No. It's a murder mystery. How do I always end up in these situations? The thought runs through your mind over and over again as you stare down at the body in front of you. It certainly wasn't how you planned on spending your evening. In fact, you didn't even really need to stay here in this place at all. You could have kept walking, pushed on through the night. Hell, at any point you could have stopped asking questions and gone to bed. But you didn't. Not after seeing the letter. You couldn't ignore it. Your curiosity was piqued. And now you're standing in front of a body. You hear a knock on the door, and as you turn, you catch your reflection in the mirror. So the premise here is that you are on the way to the city of Lux for the first good employment you've had for a long time. But it is dark and you have much longer to go, so you stop off at a place off the road called Evertree Inn to get a meal and a bed for the night. Ma'am? You snap out of your recollections to see Miss Dupree holding out her wonderful blue quill for you to sign the ledger. As you do so, she starts to explain a little more about that for which you are signing. It's 2 gold pieces for the room, breakfast included. Dinner tonight is an additional 1 gold piece. Serving is in an hour, listen for the gong, and that will be in the room to the right here. She gestures to your left. The menu tonight is a game stew with mixed vegetables and a flagon of ale. It's one of our cook's specialties. But of course, you show up and some things don't seem right. You order a room and get to know the other occupants at the place. And this is the part where the book shines. It's got a very strong first half. It does ask you to essentially info dump your backstory, where your character is working towards a dream until a fire tragically killed most of your family and you have to take up odd jobs to make ends meet. After that, you had to give up on your old plans. Your mother had survived, but her injuries left her unable to walk, and so it fell to you to take care of her. You could no longer go off chasing your dreams, and though you missed your baby brother more than you could say, there was no time to grieve. You had to step up and become responsible. You had lost everything in the fire, and without any other relatives, you were out in the streets with no money and no shelter. You spent a grueling 2 years doing whatever it took to survive, many things of which you were not proud. You began to build some sort of life among the poor of Blackstone, until finally an opportunity came your way. A chance to escape the poverty, and perhaps get back to the life you had wanted before the fire. But as soon as you get to the inn, you suddenly get a lot of freedom. After you check in, you can explore the place and meet all the people. Mrs. Dupree has left the lobby, so you find yourself standing in the entrance of the Evertree Inn, completely alone. In front of you is the check-in desk, where you know the leather-bound ledger and various other check-in papers lie hidden. And behind the desk is a door that you can only assume leads to Mrs. Dupree's private office. There doesn't appear to be anyone around. If you were quiet, you might be able to do some exploring. Otherwise, you could try ringing the bell if you want to talk to someone in person. What would you like to do? The game essentially plops you in a sandbox for a while and lets you explore each room and talk to every character. And there are actual stat checks that happen in this period. It's not just idle exploration. You can do things with a purpose in mind. You can try to suss out some of the unusual things going on in the inn. You can try to make friends with the mysterious orc who is staying there. Or you can try and sleep with the cute half-elf accompanying another one of the guests. Or of course you can wander around doing not a whole lot. Now it may take a couple of chapters of not much happening, but after some time you will encounter someone on the floor, clearly murdered. Cool thing is that you'll find a different body depending on what you've been up to. Yeah, I've played this game a bunch of times, but the body changes. This also, by necessity, means the murder mystery is a bit different each time. The culprit is the same, but the first victim can change. Now I will say, this book does a great job with its characters. There is a bit of an expectation with fantasy characters to seem flatter, like their whole concept is a list of traits. You throw an orc at people, you expect a stereotype. Same with halflings, elves, and whatnot. But here, I seldom thought that these were just characters with a list of traits, though that is probably a result of the mystery genre. Murder mysteries thrive on well-made characters, especially with ones with good exploitable flaws. After all, part of the draw of a good mystery is that it allows people to try and figure it out as they go, including learning methods and motives. So in order to have an engaging whodunit, you need to have engaging characters. Now before I go more into the literary section, I'm going to have to put a huge spoiler tag here, which matters a bit more for mystery books than most other types of stories. Skip here to go right to the gameplay section. Now I sectioned this part out to talk about some of the issues with combining mystery and fantasy. Mystery relies on combining what the audience knows with what they don't know, which gets a bit complicated when you drop a reader into a new world with its own rules. Classic fantasies, with its magic and extra races, makes this extra hard. The first thing that comes up in this story is the fact that magic seems to be available to, well, most people, not everyone, but there are plenty of people with magic capabilities, and this magic can be used to read minds. The fact that this is available can completely change the dynamics of investigations. But while that can complicate things, the real reason I have the spoiler tag here is to reveal the culprit. So here's the huge warning again, and here we go. Essentially, what is going on at the inn is that it was made from magic wood coming from a dryad's tree, angering the dryad, who is causing the wood of the inn to attack and kill its inhabitants. And then the air becomes unusually quiet. The path opens out onto a green glade where fireflies dance among the long grass at the base of a single enormous tree. The Evertree is as perfect as you were promised. Its bark is smooth, like flawless skin, and the branches reach for the sky, like fingers trying to catch a star. Walking as if in a dream, you are drawn into this idyllic clearing, drawn to the Evertree as if by magic, wondering how anything so beautiful could ever be the cause of so much death. And then you spot movement. Part of the trunk is warping, stirring. A creature blossoms out from the bark of the ancient tree, at first appearing as a new branch before solidifying into the torso of a woman. She has a wild and unfathomable look in her eyes, and her hair falls in a cascade of leaves around her naked shoulders. Her skin is the same brown as the arbor from which she has appeared, and as she leans forward, two long and slender legs follow, and she steps completely from the tree. Her wooden lips part, and when she speaks it is as though your very self has fallen out of your body. Her voice is a whisper, but it echoes through the trees, rasping, and yet as clear as a stream. You should not have come here. Now you might be thinking that my issue here is that the culprit is a character who never shows up until the end of the book. And while that can be a bit annoying, first, it is not really unheard of in mystery novels to pull this kind of crap. Read enough Agatha Christie or Arthur C. Clarke and you will run into this issue. Second, the book does give you enough clues that something is wrong with the inn itself, so you can figure that part out if you do find the correct clues. So the part that matter, that the inn itself is killing people, does come across. It's the cause that you would have never known. The fact that dryads are unusual in this world is another thing that you would have never known. Mysteries are generally not done in a fantastical world, because the reader needs to be very familiar with how the world works in order to know that anything unusual is happening. The dryad being unusual means that there really isn't a way to organically introduce them beforehand, so that players have a reason to suspect one. But with all that out of the way, let's go to the mechanics. You stat out your character like in a lot of fantasy settings. Strength, magic, perception, which also works for skill with a bow, and guile. As you can tell from the stats given, you will get into combat a few times, but these skills also have investigative applications, catching people in lies, climbing to higher places, or divining events that happened before. Oh, and there's also a health bar, which means that death is a possibility. Next, of course, are your relationship meters, though they measure more how cooperative the other characters are, rather than if they just like you. Mysteries require the occasional ally or interrogation, but a really fun thing that this game keeps track of are the clues. You see a list of clues here, each pertaining to a fact that could be important for solving the mystery. As you go, these clues update themselves as more information is presented to you, and you get more of a big picture. Clue 1 updated. To Mrs. Lysa Dupree. The City of Lux hereby suspends your license to provide lodgings at Evertree Inn pending investigations into the death of Mr. Gregory Risenfall. please refrain from continuing your business until it's been declared safe by a city council official. Signed, John Gubrick, Mayor of Lux. So much for a quiet night. What's more, at the end of every chapter, you are given a bonus to one of your stats, depending on how successful your checks have been. You can choose whatever you want, even stats that you haven't been using, and the bonus scales with your stats, giving larger bonuses to lower stats. And now for a bonus. You feel like so far you've been pretty successful at uncovering some of the mysteries that Evertree Inn has to offer, and this experience will increase your abilities moving forward. Choose one skill you would like to improve before moving on to the next chapter. You can also use bonuses to heal or restore mana in between chapters. So in terms of quality, this book does a good job with both its narrative and its mechanics, with a little bit of a lean towards the narrative due to its use of non-linear exploration before merging back into a linear storyline towards the end. But this game does do some fun things with the mechanics. Now there is one more thing to say here. This book is the first of a series. And if I'm being honest, I have some mixed feelings about having choose-your-own-adventure books in a series. Thankfully, this book seems designed in such a way that it sidesteps the issues with most series. Essentially, having a series gives the benefit of maintaining your characters and world, allowing returning players to come back to a familiar story. You can explore existing elements and flesh out the world some more. The issues, however, are logistical. If you want the same character, you will need to find ways to bring your progress from one game to the next. But more importantly, you run the risk of your audience losing track of what's going on. Because of the open-ended nature of Choose Your Own Adventures, I find that I have a couple of runs that I remember really well, but they can blend together in my mind. This isn't an issue for complete books or series, but it can be an issue for incomplete series. If I am waiting for the next book, then I have to make a choice. Either wait on the first run so that I have the events of the book in my head for the next, or allow myself to play the first book more than once to properly explore it before going clean for the next book. But this does mean that things will kind of blend in my mind a bit more. But this book sidesteps most of those problems. Sure, each book is read sequentially, but the events of one book seem to have little relevance to the next. Each book is episodic, and the only real connecting tissue is your character. Now, one of the side characters might join you for a future adventure if you convince them to come with you, and that's a very nice thing, but it won't affect you negatively if you skip the first book and go on to the second. Granted, I'm not fully sure, since I have read the Isle of Swordwind, but I have not read Lux City of Secrets yet. So in the end, Evertree Inn is a fun book with good characters and a decent mechanics in both combat and investigation. Its sandbox nature, for at least part of it, makes for a very nice bit of exploration as well. It sets up good roleplay possibilities with your character. And that is Evertree Inn. I hope you have enjoyed this review, my friends. Take care. Alright, it's been a while since I recorded. Oy. You did not notice the computer on the side there, okay? Which means that death is an opportunity. Blech. Death is not an opportunity. You leapt through the flames and raced straight for the one family member you knew you could not live without. Which I have to say, it's kind of weird that it makes you pick favorites among family members. This is just really weird.